Hi, this is Jan Draper again. My first workshop in Townships Young Voices is going to be about imagery. So here's a little bit about imagery. When babies are born, they respond to the world through their five senses. So if they're hot or cold or hungry, or there's a loud noise that scares them, they respond to that. So our senses are our most immediate way of relating to the world around us. Which means that if you write poetry using imagery that describes things we can perceive with our five senses, using imagery is a great place to begin because it immediately captures the reader. For example, not with poetry, just a little experiment with images. If I say to you that on my finger there's sitting a bird, it's a chickadee. It just flew in the house from the bird feeder outside. Can you imagine that? I'm sure that you can. If I say to you that there is an apple sitting on my hand, you can probably imagine that. Can you imagine the smell of coffee? The smell of a rose? Yes, you can, right away, immediately. So when people write poetry, they use words to describe what we can see and hear and taste and touch and smell. By the way, smell is the sense that is most closely related to memory. And I'm sure you know this already. I grew up in Brome, and when I smell popcorn, I always think of the Brome Fair. It's immediate. So, as a poet, you can use that to your advantage. You can describe a sentence. Someone says, "Oh, I remember that." And immediately they have in their head a movie that has things they can see and hear and taste and touch and smell too. Think about imagery. You have to give the reader just enough, not too much. If I describe something, if I describe an apple, then you can imagine that apple however you like. It can be a bright red apple. It can be a half-eaten apple, like the one on my desk. Whatever it is that is foremost in your mind. So this means that anyone can relate to your poem. Now, I know that in school, when a teacher gives you a poem and says, "What does this mean?" you might freak because you say, "I don't know what it means. I don't know." Okay, we skip that. We say, what can you see and hear and taste and touch and smell when you read this poem?" Then you begin to explore the picture inside your head. And once that, it's kind of like a three-dimensional movie. Once you've created that in your mind, then you begin to think, oh, well, this image is it's very cheerful or it's very sad. And then you might experience a mood. And once you've experienced a mood, then you might go on to say, well, this poem is a poem about loss, or this poem is about the great feelings about being home with your family. So, in our first workshop, we'll spend a lot of time. We'll look at some poems that use imagery, just briefly, and then we will do some exercises that can explore this subject. I think it's fun. And I write poetry too, of course. And in my poems, I use a lot of imagery. And I try to give people just enough so they can add all their own details. They can create their own movie. I look forward to seeing you at some of these workshops. I know that if you're one of those people who like poetry, you probably really like poetry. So I'm looking forward to seeing you. Anyway, this is Jan Draper in North Hatley, Quebec, wishing you a very good day wherever you are.